Southeast Asia is a region endowed with highly promising economic potential. Unfortunately, financial inclusion is still far from ideal, a condition that also applies to the Philippines. There is currently an 11 trillion pesos micro, small and medium enterprise, or MSME credit gap in the country. The Philippines is ranked 142nd for ease of getting credit by the World Bank, with almost 1 million Pinoy MSMEs considered unbankable. This is the segment that has the potential to lead and drive the country's economic growth, but is sadly still underserved. Here to provide a solution to this problem is Investree. Since its inception in 2015, Investree has never ceased to develop innovative ways for small and medium enterprises across Southeast Asia to gain access to proper financing. This expansion is done while maintaining our position as market leader in Indonesia. In 2020, Investree Philippines was launched. Through our innovative digital and data-driven infrastructure and fair business practices, we are here to provide fast, secure, simple and transparent financing solutions for Pinoy MSMEs. These solutions include invoice financing and purchase order financing. Invoice financing allows MSME owners to monetize their unpaid invoice, which help them free up their cash flow, have better control over their business capital, and maximize their monetary asset, while purchase order financing provides capital upfront for verified purchase orders, which help MSME owners fulfill larger orders from clients, make their supplier payment on time, and fast-track conversion of goods to revenue. Investree managed to set itself apart by focusing on the unbanked MSME segment, helping them to grow their number of employees as well as their revenue. This focus is further supported by a strong tech, innovation, and risk management capabilities, with a scalable and robust operational process, and a highly experienced management team, all of which have helped Investree garner many prestigious awards from regulators and international institutions. And Investree will continue to evolve, from providing innovative products to developing ecosystems where our stakeholders can experience scalable growth. Amidst all this, Investree's vision remains to change the way MSMEs are financed, to empower growth-oriented MSMEs, and to build a resilient digital economy ecosystem in the Philippines and eventually in the Southeast Asian region. With Investree, everyone can grow. With your support, we will grow together. Investree, everyone can grow.
Our company, King Louis Flowers and Plants, primarily we're involved in the production of cut flowers and flowering pot plants. Nagkulang kami ng funds, tamang-tama, Investree came, and maganda naman at natuloy yung aming transaction. They provided us a loan to bridge our requirements. It's very helpful, it's very timely, and yeah, we're happy. And I think there's a lot of room for growth. The future of the world depends much on entrepreneurs. We are the engine of growth. As you succeed more, you are helping other people.
Hi, my name is John Beechnick, and I'm the CEO for Halcyon Digital Media Design Incorporated. We're a software, mobile apps, and web design company. What is important in a small company like ours is that you always pay wages on time, even if the money isn't coming in. And that's where Investree helped us. So we were able to have short-term loans to help us with cash flow. I think We're looking at the fastest growth we've ever experienced. So, with so many companies going online now and looking for custom software development, I think we're in the right place, in the right business at the right time.
Southeast Asia is a region endowed with highly promising economic potential. Unfortunately, financial inclusion is still far from ideal, a condition that also applies to the Philippines. There is currently an 11 trillion pesos micro, small and medium enterprise, or MSME credit gap in the country. The Philippines is ranked 142nd for ease of getting credit by the World Bank, with almost 1 million Pinoy MSMEs considered unbankable. This is the segment that has the potential to lead and drive the country's economic growth, but is sadly still underserved. Here to provide a solution to this problem is Investree. Since its inception in 2015, Investree has never ceased to develop innovative ways for small and medium enterprises across Southeast Asia to gain access to proper financing. This expansion is done while maintaining our position as market leader in Indonesia. In 2020, Investree Philippines was launched. Through our innovative digital and data-driven infrastructure and fair business practices, we are here to provide fast, secure, simple, and transparent financing solutions for Pinoy MSMEs. These solutions include invoice financing and purchase order financing. Invoice financing allows MSME owners to monetize their unpaid invoice, which help them free up their cash flow, have better control over their business capital, and maximize their monetary asset, while purchase order financing provides capital upfront for verified purchase orders, which help MSME owners fulfill larger orders from clients, make their supplier payment on time, and fast-track conversion of goods to revenue. Investree managed to set itself apart by focusing on the unbanked MSME segment, helping them to grow their number of employees as well as their revenue. This focus is further supported by a strong tech, innovation, and risk management capabilities, with a scalable and robust operational process, and a highly experienced management team, all of which have helped Investree garner many prestigious awards from regulators and international institutions. And Investree will continue to evolve, from providing innovative products to developing ecosystems where our stakeholders can experience scalable growth. Amidst all this, Investree's vision remains to change the way MSMEs are financed, to empower growth-oriented MSMEs, and to build a resilient digital economy ecosystem in the Philippines and eventually in the Southeast Asian region. With Investree, everyone can grow. With your support, we will grow together. Investree, everyone can grow.
Our company, King Louis Flowers and Plants, primarily we're involved in the production of cut flowers and flowering pot plants. Nagkulang kami ng funds, tamang-tama, Investree Team, and maganda naman at natuloy yung aming transaction. They provided us with loan to bridge our requirements. It's very helpful, it's very timely, and yeah, we're happy. I think there's a lot of room for growth. The future of the world depends much on entrepreneurs. We are the engine of growth. As you succeed more, you are helping other people.
Hi, my name is John Beechnick, and I'm the CEO for Halcyon Digital Media Design Incorporated. We're a software, mobile apps, and web design company. What is important in a small company like ours is that you always pay wages on time, even if the money isn't coming in. And that's where Investree helped us. So we were able to have short-term loans to help us with cash flow. I think we're looking at the fastest growth we've ever experienced. So, with so many companies going online now and looking for custom software development, I think we're in the right place, in the right business at the right time.
Investree co-founder and chairman of the Indonesian Fintech Lending Association, Mr. Adrian Gunadi, Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles, Xavier Marzan, friends from the banking industry, colleagues in the Banco Central, good morning. The COVID-19 pandemic has indeed brought us many challenges, but it has also likewise provided plenty of opportunities. For one, the pandemic has required and quickened the adoption of digital innovations across many sectors, including the financial services industry. Innovative supply chain financing models such as Investree's online invoice and purchase order financing suitably respond to the government's push to shift our economy towards a digital one. And the BSP has been one of the champions in the government's efforts towards digitalization. Last year, we launched the Digital Payments Transformation Roadmap for 2020-2023, where we have set two strategic objectives. First is the strengthening of customer preference for digital payments by converting 50% of the volume of retail transactions into digital payments and increasing the share of adult population that are financially included to 70% through ownership of transaction account. Since the registration to the Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys, began, 3.8 million Filipinos, previously unbanked, now own an account. Equally impressive, the citizens' public preference for digital financial transactions grew exponentially during this pandemic, as electronic fund transfers using InstaPay and PesoNet were considerably higher compared to pre-COVID period. The second objective is to make available more digital financial products and services designed to respond to the needs of consumers, to be achieved by fostering the innovative use of consumer data for product development. For this agenda, the BSP seeks to encourage the digital transformation of financial institutions by introducing key frameworks. First is the Digital Banking Framework, which will transform the delivery of financial services to hard-to-reach markets that brick-and-mortar banking is unable to service. Second is the Open Finance Framework, which will support the design of customer-centric financial products and services through consent-driven sharing of customers' data among market players. We see the potential of open finance not only in expanding market reach, but also as a way for financial institutions to develop a better understanding of customers' needs. We will be happy to see financial institutions offer customized financial products and services for our MSMEs, particularly those engaged in agriculture and are part of supply chains. As access to digital technology is increasingly being democratized, we are seeing cost-effective solutions such as software as a service enabled by partnerships between banks and fintechs. We recognize that developing digital capabilities can be capital intensive on the part of banks. Thus, strategic partnerships and other collaborative arrangements are valuable in this regard. Some of you have outsourced digital platforms and solutions like cloud banking. And for the others that are still in the early stages of their digital journey, you can always do it on a pilot or what we call a test and learn basis to familiarize yourselves with the possible implementation issues. The BSP will be ready to work with you through the process. In fact, we are exploring to formalize the test and learn approach into a regulatory sandbox to further stimulate innovation in the financial sector. The BSP is also enhancing existing regulations to streamline the process for outsourcing and IT risk management. This would support your efforts for digital transformation while addressing governance and management of risk. In closing, this forum could not have come at a more opportune time. Although the economy is still in its nascent recovery phase, a shift on the mindset of economic players is necessary in order to capitalize on this momentum. The recovery that we seek cannot be a return to our old system. Instead, the approach in the new economy should be innovative and digital. As such, I encourage the banking leaders to discuss and employ innovative and digital solutions that will make access to finance easier and quicker for MSMEs. And not only breathe life into our local businesses, but propel the economy into a higher growth trajectory as well. Thank you and good morning.
Mayor Jokno for the very amazing opening. And for our second keynote from the Bureau of Trade and Industrial Policy Research, Department of Trade and Industries, let us all give a warm welcome to Director Janet Cuenca.
Hi, good morning. Can I share my screen? I have prepared PowerPoint for this.
Yes, Ms. Janet, please go ahead. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, I'll just turn off my video so not to slow my connection.
No problem.
Okay, so do you see my screen?
Yes, Director, we can
Alright.
see it.
All right.
Thank you.
So, yeah, my topic for today is increasing MSME capacity through technology and innovation. So let me give you the Philippine MSME landscape. Micro, small, and medium enterprises play a crucial role in the overall Philippine growth and development. MSMEs accounted for 99.5% of total Philippine establishments, generating about 62.8% of total employment. Most of MSME establishments are in wholesale and retail trade, accounting for about 45.7%, and accommodation and food service, accounting for 14.8%. Still, a significant number of MSMEs are engaged in manufacturing, accounting for 11.5%. Signed into law in April 2019, the RA number 11293 Or the Philippine Innovation Act harnesses innovation to provide MSMEs with greater access to finance, market, and technology, and be part of the domestic and global supply chain. It mandates the provision of a 1 billion revolving fund, access to market and technology, and a comprehensive support program for MSMEs from incorporation to internationalization. The general objective is to generate and scale up action in all levels and areas of education, training, research and development towards promoting innovation and internationalization activities of MSMEs as driver of sustainable and inclusive growth. There are trends affecting MSMEs. Digital transformation is a continuing process. The enactment of the Philippine Innovation Act has provided a boost towards digitalization. Nevertheless, it was the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting lockdowns that pushed businesses and consumers to embrace technology and further innovate. Some of the trends are flashed on your screen. The pandemic has changed the business landscape in the Philippines. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas noted a sharp decline in check and ATM transactions in 2020, where digital transactions rose by 74%. New technologies such as data analytics, artificial intelligence, and automation have gained interest among business leaders in order to meet the changing consumer patterns and workplace standard requirements. Startups and other innovators have found plenty of space where they can create solutions and services that can aid MSMEs in their digital transformation. For example, we have fintech. Fintech lending, which provides banking solutions that MSMEs are not able to get from traditional banks. Fintech companies provide quick and convenient business loans without requiring collateral. Prior to the pandemic, the DTI's 2019 survey on the technology utilization of manufacturing companies in the Philippines showed that 60% of MSMEs surveyed use only very low technology in their manufacturing process. With regard to investment plans in the next 5 years, 50% of surveyed MSMEs are more likely to invest in marketing, sales, and logistics. The pandemic and resulting change in the way the most businesses and consumers transact have pushed MSMEs to adapt in order to survive. It is towards this end that the DTI has been implementing initiatives to support the digital transformation of SMEs. The MSME Development Plan 2017 to 2022. In this regard, the DTI is mandated to promote the growth and development of MSMEs and develop globally competitive and innovative industry and service sectors. In line with the Philippine Innovation Act and guided by the framework of this MSME development plan and also in collaboration with international development partners, the DTI has established the following initiatives to support MSMEs in the areas of technology and innovation. We have the Shared Service Facilities Project / Fabrication Laboratories, 33 SSF or Fab Labs that is funded by DTI and privately run Fab Labs, collaborated with experts to produce personal protective equipment. We have the Business Name Registration System, NextGen, which provides ease of business registration through online platform. We have the Control Plus Base Reboot Now that offers a series of free webinars that are targeted to MSMEs who need to transform their business digitally. Electronic Business Permits and Licensing System is a cloud-based software developed by the DICT that enables LGUs to process application for new and renewal of business permits electronically. We have the Kapatid Mentor online. The KMME is a capacity building program where micro enterprises go through a series of coaching and mentorship sessions by experienced entrepreneurs and business experts. Go Negosyo offers an online mentoring session on their official Facebook page, joined by prominent Go Negosyo mentors and business experts to discuss business issues and concerns, as well as provide technical and practical know-how on managing micro and small businesses. International Training Center Modular Distance Learning MSMEs are encouraged to join and avail of this free modular distance course. In addition, we also have the ASEAN SME Academy, which is administered by the PTTC Global MSME Academy. It is a one-stop multi-platform online learning and information resource, which aims to provide training and mentorship to enhance ASEAN SMEs capabilities to grow and compete regionally and internationally. Also, online national food fair in Shopee.ph and Shopee mobile app, a joint project of the Bureau of Domestic Trade Promotion and ECO, DTI Regional Operations Group, and Shopee Philippines. It is a pilot online trade fair featuring 29 participants, including SME exhibitors. Consumers can now shop at the comfort of their homes and order healthy snacks, vegetarian gourmet food, processed food products, and various Filipino delicacies from Pinoy MSMEs. Digital Hall provides a virtual component for MSMEs to showcase their innovative and quality products and service online. OneStore.ph, developed by the DOST, is an e-commerce web application that operates nationwide and caters primarily to Philippine consumers. Tradeline Philippines, a business intelligence platform of the Export Marketing Bureau that aims to deliver timely and relevant info and assistance to existing and potential exporters to enhance their capabilities and competitiveness as suppliers of quality goods and services to global markets. To improve access to finance, we have Pondo sa Pagbabago at Pag-Asenso financing program of the Small Business Corporation that provides microenterprises an alternative source of financing to 5-6 lending commonly availed by microenterprises. We have the Bayanihan Cares 2 program, a special financing program for MSMEs affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. It is a 0% loan managed by the SB Corporation to enable enterprises to restart, recover, and grow their business. Medium enterprise and other business enterprise lending, which strengthens the DBP's role in promoting development SMEs and expand the bank's MSME loan portfolio consistent with the Magna Carta for MSMEs. Retail lending for micro and small enterprises. Land Bank interim rehab support to cushion and favorably affected enterprises by COVID-19. That is to support SMEs, cooperatives, and MFIs through the provision of additional funds and loan restructuring under more flexible terms and conditions. This CarTech mobile app, all-in-one inclusion super app, which allows its users to open a basic deposit account with RCBC and to use this account to perform various financial transactions. To enable business environment, we have Negosyo Center, a primary point of contact for businesses to avail of business development services. As regards enhancing management and labor capacities, the DTI is likewise intensively advocating for reskilling and upskilling of existing and would-be entrepreneurs, including displaced workers, who are encouraged to venture into business. To improve market access, we have the following Go Local, a retail concept store where micro and small enterprises are able to distribute their products free of charge. We have the OTOP, a program that provides a comprehensive assistance package to MSMEs through product development sessions with design experts and market access through OTOP Philippines Hub, retail concept stores located nationwide. E-commerce migration. DTI piloted the conduct of online trade fairs by developing web pages for regional trade fairs and OTOP Trade Fair and partnering with online e-commerce platforms to conduct sectoral and national trade fairs. As a fitting end to my brief presentation, I would like to invite everyone to the National MSME Week 2021, which includes activities that show the pivot towards technology and innovation. This year, we celebrate the backbone of our economy as we empower, equip, and assure them of an equitable and sustainable recovery program post-COVID-19. This year's theme is a reflection of our Filipino MSMEs. While the pandemic has hardly hit the sector, they remained resilient and innovative as they weather the storm. So the theme is, totoo nga na ang makabagong MSMEs ang ating bagong pag-asa laban sa pandemya. The current slide shows more activities for the MSME Week. And with that, I end my presentation. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Director Janet Cuenca, for that very inspiring and insightful opening, sharing about how shifting to the needs of consumers in this digital age, and also sharing the MSME development plan, which a lot of our attendees will surely benefit from. And also, thank you for extending the invite for the National MSME Week, which is also really exciting. Again, it's happening this August 2 to 6. Our Investree team will also place some details on the chat box, as you can see. And I think that's a really great start for this morning's forum. Thank you again, Director Janet and Governor Benjamin Jokno. I'm excited to introduce to you our first speaker for today's forum. For our first speaker, he is a lawyer who obtained his law degree from Ateneo School of Law. He is also a firm believer in the capacity of the government to make a profound difference in the lives of our people, and is fully committed to using his new post to deliver on the President's pledge to bring development to the regions outside Metro Manila and to provide more economic opportunities for his kapwa provinciano. He is also a multi-awarded legislator. He received the Golden Globe Awards for Excellence in Public Service in 2015 and 2016, and was also awarded the Outstanding Congressman Award in 2012 and again in 2015 by the prestigious international award-giving body Super Brands Marketing International. Please let us all welcome Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. My gratitude to Investree for inviting me to this important conference centered on one crucial aspect of our path towards economic recovery. I appreciate you organizing online engagements like these to inform more people about ways that we can all work on to help our country and our people recover from this unprecedented pandemic. Economic growth dropped by negative 9.5% in 2020, the most since 1946. But this index does not reflect the country's solid foundations. After all, the Philippines had a 21-year growth streak all the way up to year 2019. Our economy is slowly recovering after easing of restrictions and starting of our national vaccination program. The BSP attributes the rebound to higher consumer spending, to infrastructure spending, a more flexible monetary policy, and global recovery. In fact, the GDP is projected to rise 6.5% to 7.5% this year and 8% to 10% in 2022. Statistically, MSMEs make up over 99% of all enterprises in the Philippines. MSMEs also account for a large percentage of our country's GDP and employ more than half of our workers. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has made our MSMEs vulnerable. Due to the restrictions, many firms have closed, affecting our economy. In a market with low demand, businesses were obliged to adapt and use various strategies to stay relevant. And in order to adjust to the new normal, most businesses implemented alternative work arrangements for their staff. Many firms turned to using internet channels. For some, this was insufficient. They needed also government's help to survive the COVID-19 pandemic. So, to address the negative effects of COVID-19 on enterprises and companies in the Philippines, the recently passed Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises, or CREATE Act, was passed. To increase economic activity and migration, the law seeks to reduce financial burdens on these enterprises. Government also provided direct financial help, credit facilities, financing arrangements, and low-interest loans to our MSMEs. This allowed them to grow and create more jobs, giving them a fighting opportunity to recover from the pandemic. After all, MSMEs are important drivers of economic growth and the backbone of our economy. Therefore, helping them recover is absolutely critical. We passed the Republic Act 11032, the Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Government Service Delivery Act to improve our country's ease of doing business, to streamline government operations and reduce turnaround times, making all transactions more efficient. This was actually one of the President's first statements at his 2016 State of the Nation address, achieving competitiveness and ease of doing business is mandatory for the President. RA 11032 actually also established the Anti-Red Tape Authority, or ARTA, tasked with enforcing the law, implementing rules and regulations, and monitoring the national policy on anti-red tape and the ease of doing business. The pandemic has compelled most government institutions to digitize their processes, and most agencies operate online and have shortened processes to better serve our people, especially those confined to their homes. Now, before the pandemic, we had a lengthy history of structural reforms and sound macroeconomic policies which laid the path for considerable capital and liquidity buffers in the banking sector. During the pandemic, the BSP and our national government worked together to execute stimulus packages, programs, disaster relief measures, and moratoria. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas has granted time-bound regulatory and operational relief measures to BSP-supervised financial institutions. The BSP aided the national government by providing short-term loans, and as a result, the financial system received around $42 billion in liquidity. Governor Benjamin Diokno recently identified the Philippine banking system's three core strengths. The banking industry has a strong capital position. To avoid slipping below the BSP and BIS minimum limits of 10% and 8%, banks must maintain capital adequacy ratios above these thresholds. As a result, the industry's risk-based capital adequacy ratio was 17.2% in September of 2020. Financial institutions also have sufficient cash reserves to assist them to weather short-term liquidity issues and provide long-term funding. The liquidity coverage ratio for universal and commercial banks is roughly double the statutory level of 100% as of November of 2020. Minimal liquidity ratios of stand-alone thrifts, rural banks, and cooperatives continue to surpass even regulatory standards. The increase in bank assets due to increased deposit obligations is the last aspect to examine. And at the end of December 2020, banking system's assets were 19.4 trillion. To summarize, these factors aided the country's financial sector. We expect an uptick in economic activity with our national vaccination program increasing momentum in progress. On crowdfunding. Now, crowdfunding creates a diversified source of funding from individuals or businesses. It is a way of financing where you take tiny sums of money from many people who are interested in your project or business concept. Individuals or firms interested in your business can invest in it by contributing to its capital. In a sense, it allows for capital infusion, but only under certain conditions, including profit sharing or a stake in your company's equity. The investor's contributions and benefits may differ depending on the internet platforms, the firms, and initiatives. The sources of funding might range from gifts to equity, resulting in a variety of processes and contractual arrangements between the firm and the individual investor. With all of these options, crowdfunding expands the reach of financial infusion. Sourcing finances and explaining the necessity to support your firm builds relationships. It builds your network of clients, customers, and investors. Crowdfunding then facilitates the infusion of much-needed cash or capital and, at the same time, provides an opportunity to scale up potential investors and allows for much needed review in terms of process gaps, resource mobilization, even human capital investment. Now, to conclude, government remains resolute, absolutely resolute, in taking the necessary measures to deal with this pandemic as we move forward, balancing public health concerns with reviving our economy. So let us all continue to work together to inform the banking and financing sector and the industry players, including our MSMEs and our kababayans, that we need concerted efforts and collaborative actions in all our aspirations and undertakings as an industry, as a community, and as a nation. Kailangan natin magtulungan. We can begin doing our share by encouraging your employees, neighbors, friends, and relatives to participate in the national vaccination rollout. This collective action will move us forward with our plans and look for growth opportunities for the banking industry as we contribute to the country's economic recovery. I'm calling on all of you to remind your family, friends, relatives, colleagues, and all the people in your lives the importance of getting vaccinated, not only for public health, but also for our economy. Allow me to reiterate the message from our experts. The best vaccine is the one that is available. All vaccines with EUA are safe and effective, and no one is safe until everyone is safe. So please get vaccinated immediately. Thank you very much, and I wish everyone a fruitful conference.
All right. Thank you so much, Cabinet Secretary Carla Nograles, for that presentation. I truly learned a lot from that, and I believe everyone else did as well. And thank you also as well for that reminder to get vaccinated. That is correct. The vaccine that's readily available is the best one that we can get as of the moment. And again, just as a reminder for everyone, please feel free to chat with your questions in the Q&A box anytime as the session goes along. I'm more than excited to hear more from our second speaker, but before that, to open our second session, I would love to welcome our FDEV President and CEO, and also Investree Director and Board Member, Mr. Xavier Marzan, for a keynote.
BSP Governor Benjamin Diokno, Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles, Director Janet Cuenca, Mr. Adrian Gunadi, friends from the Bankers Association of the Philippines, Chamber of Thrift Banks, and Rural Bankers Association of the Philippines, peers and partners from the industry, a warm welcome to everyone and good morning. Happy to be here. I would like to focus my message this morning on how banks and financial institutions can leverage current innovations in the market to set themselves up for success in an accelerated digital future. So, as you've all experienced over the course of the past year and a half, we've moved ahead 3 to 7 years in terms of digital adoption in a lot of different industries and many aspects of our lives. Banking and financial services is not immune to this. In fact, consumers and SMEs have adopted digital financial services, or DFS, like never before. And a recent study by Google, Bain, and Temasek has found that the digitalization of all participants in the DFS ecosystem has been accelerated. And this ecosystem will continue to have robust growth in the near future. As you can see from the charts here, all aspects of DFS are expected to grow significantly moving forward. All this has led to the thinking that fintechs will essentially disrupt or eat the lunch of these traditional banking institutions. And in the last several years, we've seen this competition between traditional banks and new fintech companies. And this thinking is now becoming even more prevalent and more real, actually, with the advent of new digital challenger banks. In the Philippines, for example, there have been a number of new digital banks and digital-only banking services that have emerged in the last year or so alone. All these market and competitive dynamics put more pressure on traditional banks to digitalize and transform quickly. But the incumbent banks actually have great advantages and are well positioned to compete with digital challenger banks and fintech companies in the Philippines. They still have a large base of users and often have a broad distribution network. Plus, they benefit from trust and brand value as well. Banks have also aggressively launched their own wallets or improved their digital banking services recently. And these services have shown growth in the past year. So, what can banks do to better succeed in an accelerated digital future? Let me offer three things here. First is to start digitalizing customer facing experiences. When we say this, it doesn't mean to simply convert an existing offline or branch based process into a digital channel. You might have to reimagine the entire experience and rethink the actual steps required to do any transaction in a digital first environment. This also includes the need to look at your back office to make sure that you are able to deliver the experience that customers want. And what customers want at the end of the day is low friction and immediacy. As the futurist Brett King said, banking is no longer somewhere you go, but something you do. Banks may also need to revisit their core platforms in order to enable these new digital experiences. There are, of course, banking as a service platforms out there that one can take a look at. Next is embrace open banking and embedded finance as part of strategy. Open banking is providing third-party providers open access to consumer banking, transaction, and other financial data from banks and non-bank financial institutions through the use of APIs or application programming interfaces. This creates value for banks and FIs in many ways, including expanding their access to underserved customers, providing new product offerings, or delivering more quality customer experiences, to name a few. It's actually a major source of innovation that is poised to reshape the banking sector in general. Couple this with advances in technology infrastructure and innovations in regulation. This also enables anyone and everyone to essentially access financial products and services in their own terms, in their own channels and devices, basically unbundling financial services. This means financial services can be embedded anywhere. And we see this happening already today, where any company that is not in banking, say e-commerce, mobility, real estate, agriculture, or healthcare, can now offer financial services to better serve their customers. We have Apple offering cards, for example, Grab providing insurance, Lazada cross-selling financing, and many more. For banks and FIs, the question to think about moving forward is, how do you see your role in this new open digital landscape? Whether you engage directly with customers or be the developer of financial products. So definitely something worthwhile to consider. The third is to pursue partnerships with startups and fintechs. The market, both locally and regionally, is actually peppered with various fintech players who have deep expertise or disruptive technologies in specific areas. And they can definitely help accelerate time to market for any initiative of the bank, whether that's opening up their core platform, or offering new services and experiences, or providing new channels for growth, etc. And there are actually many more fintech companies that are emerging, since one out of every five ventures that receive funding globally are actually in the fintech space. So it might make sense for the incumbents to partner with these startups to accelerate innovation, drive growth, or make digital transformation happen. And one has many options in the type of partnerships that can be pursued. It can be a proof of concept, pilot, co-development effort, licensing, JV, even M&A and investment. So all of these can actually be made available. So again, to leverage on today's innovations, banks and FIs need to act fast and digitalize customer-facing experiences, embrace open banking and embedded finance as part of their strategy, and pursue partnerships with startups and fintechs to accelerate their own initiatives. Thank you, everyone, and hope you all enjoy the rest of the event today.
Thank you, Mr. Xavier Morzan. That was an amazing keynote. Very insightful and inspiring about how technology really plays a big part and how it impacted all aspects of life, especially the banking sector, and what can we do moving forward, right? That was a great start for our second part of the session. And before we actually move to our second speaker, we would love to share a short video presentation from Investree.
Our company, King Louis Flowers and Plants, no, primarily we're involved in the production of cut flowers and flowering pot plants. No. Nagkulang kami ng funds, tamang-tama, Investree Team, and good, maganda naman at natuloy yung aming transaction. They provided us with loan to bridge our requirements. It's very helpful, it's very timely, and yeah, we're happy. I think there's a lot of room for growth. No? The future of the world depends. We are the engine of growth. As you succeed more, you are helping other people.
Hi, my name is John Beechnick, and I'm the CEO for Halcyon Digital Media Design Incorporated. We're a software, mobile apps, and web design company. What is important in a small company like ours is that you always pay wages on time, even if the money isn't coming in. And that's where Investree helped us. So we were able to have short-term loans to help us with cash flow. I think we're looking at the fastest growth we've ever experienced. With so many companies going online now and looking for custom software development, I think we're in the right place, in the right business at the right time.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Investree, for sharing that video. And now I would love to welcome our second speaker. He is one of the co-founders of Investree with 20 plus years of lending experience at Standard Chartered and Citibank. He genuinely understands the financing needs of small and medium businesses. This knowledge, coupled with a commitment to financial inclusion, have inspired him to build the financial platform that connects SMEs with investors. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Adrian Gunadi.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Mabuhay. It's an honor for me to be speaking at today's session, which is a very important milestone for Investree and Investree Philippines with regards to our expansion in the region. So perhaps allow me to share a little bit about Investree, what we do in Indonesia, and how we see the landscape evolving in Indonesia. So as we know, fintech is a word that we have heard several times in our discussions today. There were several points mentioned by Governor Diokno that is very relevant to financial technology. And in general, fintech are startups that are focusing on providing financial services through electronic and digital platforms. So next slide. We see evolvement in the fintech space in various sectors, starting from deposits, loans, investments, and payments. I think what fintech brings is a unique proposition of using the technology to provide an alternative way, an alternative means of serving the financial products. As we all know, fintech lending adopts an alternative process in terms of digital lending, alternative credit scoring, as well as a different experience of how we're serving segments within the underserved or the underbanked. And this recent trend or development in technology has actually led to the growth of fintech in Indonesia. In the next slide. As we see in this slide, Indonesia has had, I would say, a head start in terms of the fintech industry, the fintech growth, and Investree is proud to be part of that pioneer. We started Investree about 6 years ago with a simple mission of how we can provide access to finance for small business, and this is a problem that we were trying to solve when we first started. And as you can see in the table in the slide, now there are 127 registered and 61 licensed fintech lending companies in Indonesia, all under the OJK or similar to the SEC. And to date, we have disbursed a cumulative loan of $12.8 billion. This is the data for May of 2021. Total unique lenders of 167 million, and also unique borrowers of around 400 million. And this is what we see the potential of fintech lending, given the way it is addressing a gap in the market, given the way it is addressing the needs or access to finance in Indonesia, which the credit gap stands at about $100 billion to date. Next slide. So this is the fintech lending model that is allowed under regulation in Indonesia under POJK 77, whereby we are a platform that connects between the potential borrowers and the lenders, which in this case, the platform such as Investree does the underwriting, does the credit scoring, verification, loan administration, to facilitate the process between the borrowers and connect with the lenders. So this is what is allowed within the regulation as a basis of our operation and operating model. Next slide. Again, this is a snapshot of how the industry has evolved, and we believe that this is just the beginning, given the opportunities, the number of underserved SMEs, as I said, roughly about 100 billion, underbanked people, roughly about 132 million. So again, we see this is just the beginning and the potential growth within the next few years. And obviously, COVID has only accelerated that growth. Next slide. These are some of the different profiles of fintech lending that is established in Indonesia. You have those that are focusing on productive loans. You have those focusing also on consumer loans. So these are the typical profile of unique fintech lenders that are within Indonesia. So you have the SME financing, such as Investree, which typically provides working capital facilities to SMEs. You have the microfinance, also providing working capital, and consumer loan, which is driven either by personal loan or a pay later product, which is the recent trend and growing rapidly in Indonesia. Next slide. So Investree is actually the market leader in Indonesia when it comes to SME lending. We have facilitated close to about 721 million. And now, obviously, it is an honor for us to also be present in Philippines, as well as in our operation in Thailand. What's unique about us compared to the other competitors in Indonesia is that we have quite a unique market or segment in terms of the product focus. Number one is supply chain financing, with a focus in invoice financing, short-term working capital solution, of which we work together with partners, with ecosystems to reach out these SMEs. And I'll touch upon that a little bit later. Next slide. This is a snapshot on how we are positioned in the market. So we continue to lead in terms of the overall position in the market, and also market share within the national productive loan within Indonesia of about 4.16%. Next slide. Next. So again, as I mentioned, the story behind Investree when we first started 6 years ago is how do we serve, provide solutions for small, medium businesses we see it is being underserved by the bank. Always a challenge for small business to have access to finance. And this is where we come in, providing technology and using digital to make loans more accessible for SME, to become the industry preferred partner for SME business solutions. Next slide. So it has been quite a a very interesting journey as we have been pioneering and trailblazing fintech lending in Indonesia since beginning of 2016. This milestone shows how we have evolved over the past few years from a standalone peer-to-business model in Indonesia. 2019, we had some inorganic growth in creating or developing joint venture. And we'll also touch upon, how we have worked closely with the banks and creating a strategic collaboration with the banks, as well as 2021 obtaining licenses in 2 other countries outside of Indonesia, Thailand, as well as the Philippines. Next. So a brief snapshot of who we are. Myself, I'm joined by my other 2 fellow co-founders, Dr. Amir and Casey, who will also be speaking at today's event. And we are quite blessed to be also backed by strong shareholders, some of the biggest banks in Indonesia, as well as MUFG as the biggest bank in Japan, who are part of our cap table. Next slide. In terms of segment, this is actually where we are targeting. So you talk about the SME demographics in Indonesia. You hear the number 65 million small, medium businesses. So when we look at that segment, where do we play? We focus on more of the small and medium businesses. So this chart shows a maximum annual turnover of about 3.5 million. From as low as $20,000, this is where we focus. And we believe that this segment, which contributes roughly about 36% of the country's GDP, remains very lucrative, given the fact that this segment remains underserved by the banks. So when Investree started out, we focused on this segment and slowly grew and further deepened the integration, the digitalization within this segment together by working with our partners. And I'll share a little bit later on the next few slides. Next. So in terms of product, we actually are quite unique in the fact that we serve the SMEs through supply chain financing. I think that comes from our background as bankers, whereby we also wanted to ensure that we are able to manage the risks related to the repayment of the SMEs. How are we able to provide certainty of payment? And so we looked and we saw the opportunity of how supply chain financing can be a unique segment focus of how we continue to support and provide working capital for the SMEs, but at the same time are able to manage the risk and the repayment risk related to the business. And so invoice financing remains our largest product towards the overall portfolio, which constitutes roughly about 95% of the total product portfolio, followed by other working capital solutions such as buyer financing or inventory financing, as well as our unique product, merchant cash advance, of which we're working with some of the largest payment gateway in Indonesia. Another point I want to make is also Sharia. So Indonesia being the world's largest Muslim population, Investree, we also have a Sharia offer, a Sharia proposition that we are providing through our platform. So it gives an option for our borrowers, for our lenders to also transact in a Sharia compliant manner, of which is a key differentiator compared to the other players in the market who does not have a dual offering or two position. And I think this is relevant to Indonesia's SME sector. Next slide. Yeah, so this is in general our business model. Again, as I shared, this is similar to what I had shared earlier with regards to the regulation POJK 77. So we are a platform connecting the SMEs with the lenders. What's unique about Investree is that we also have not only institution, but also retail lenders on the platform. In fact, we have roughly about 40,000 active retail lenders in the platform. And we actually started with retail in Indonesia, as opposed to the Philippine crowd lending model, where it is purely mostly institution. Again, I think this is where we are providing a differentiation to the traditional approach of doing SME lending, is using not only traditional data, but using non-traditional data to credit score, to enhance the visibility of the SME, and to give a better understanding of the risk profile of the SMEs to the lenders. And we have our own unique proprietary AI machine learning based credit scoring model called I4C, of which we are also now leveraging this and starting to offer AI4C as a product per se to other financial services, other banks in Indonesia, as a alternative credit score for SMEs. So in a nutshell, this is our model that we are implementing to serve the SMEs. Next slide. So how do we acquire the SMEs? I think this slide shows our unique positioning. So we work with what we call the digital partners, or the ecosystem partners. So we are connected with different, or a variety of ecosystem partners, such as the e-procurement, payment gateway, tech logistic, agri-tech, e-commerce. So these are some of the, I would say, enablers or ecosystem enablers that we are able to reach out to SMEs. Investree provides a embedded finance or embedded fintech lending solution through our partners. And so this gives us greater visibility in terms of behavior data of the SMEs from the different partners. Number two, it's also a lower cost of acquisition at a better verification method in order for us to assess the quality and the behavior of the SMEs. And this is a unique ecosystem play that we have built and scaled. It has enabled us to scale over the past couple of years, but it also has enabled us to weather uncertainties such as COVID, because you're still able to serve and you are able to select more resilient SMEs that are connected through these type of digital ecosystems, and that you are able to see the behavior, the repayment at a more real-time basis. So I think this is one of the advantage of working together and collaborating with ecosystems rather than being a standalone fintech lending player in markets such as Indonesia. So next slide, the same playbook we are adopting in terms of product, in terms of approach in Philippines as well as in Thailand. In the Philippines, we're working closely with our joint venture partner, the PhilInvest Group, to further replicate what we have done in Indonesia through the ecosystem, and working closely with digital partners in the Philippines. Similar story to what we're doing in Thailand, working with the payment gateways, e-procurement within Thailand as a means to reach out more SMEs and scale the business in those two markets. Next slide. And with that, it has enabled us to scale. This is data as per June 2021. So we have originated since inception close to about $620 million, which obviously is quite a significant achievement in terms of how we are able to digitize the SME lending, how to make it more accessible. But at the same time, if you look at the box on the left bottom corner, indicates also our non-performing remains relatively healthy at 1.44%. despite the pandemic. I think I cannot re-emphasize, the way we work with partners, the way we work with ecosystems to originate, to validate, as well as ensure the repayment of the SMEs goes through the end-to-end ecosystem, and digitizing the process. I think that's another important aspect, how we are automating, how we're digitizing the process and making it much more seamless, for the SMEs and for us also, to process the loans. Next slide. And so collaboration between banks and ecosystem, I think in Indonesia has been moving at a very fast pace. I think these are the three typical methods of collaboration that we see in Indonesia, between banks and fintech, where we see the life stages of the collaboration between bank and fintech have gone from, a more of a connected approach. Number one, I think that's the first method of collaboration between banks and fintech. The sandbox approach, it's a trial and pilot mode. Typically, the banks start an innovation lab, they have a sandbox approach, and connect with the fintechs for certain products or services. Number two, which is where most of the banks are in Indonesia, are doing channeling through fintech. So again, what we have seen is that the fintech players are becoming the digital SME branch for banks in Indonesia, which enables the bank to originate new types of borrowers that has been underwritten, that has been processed by the fintech. So it is actually a lower and a cheaper cost of acquisition for the bank to reach out on the SMEs. So this is where we see most, progressive banks in Indonesia heading towards in terms of partnership with fintech. And the third phase is obviously investing in fintech. So what we see in Indonesia, big banks, state-owned banks are setting up their own corporate venture arm, of which this corporate venture arm invests in fintech companies, whether it's on the payment side, whether it's on the lending side, to bring in the technology and apply it to enhance their services within the bank. So I think this is the third stage that we also see in the market. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of how our banking partnership or collaboration has evolved. We're working with some of the biggest banks in Indonesia, state-owned banks, private banks, as well as the new neobanks that are coming in the market. So we're working closely with the neobanks as well. Okay, next slide. So this gives you a brief example of how we are connected between the ecosystem, how this ecosystem works, typical merchants, vendors, suppliers that we are accessing through our ecosystem partners. We are originating these loans online through this digital ecosystem. And then the data, the information, we use that to credit score, to assess and provide this offering to the institutional lenders, such as the banks, private banks, as well as rural banks. So I think what's unique and perhaps relevant to some of the audience here is that Investree is also working with some of the progressive rural banks to do channeling. So obviously they see us as an alternative channel to source the deals, to source the new origination. And I think this is where we see a lot of the banks benefiting from this collaboration. And next slide. We also highlighted what we are doing on the e-commerce. I noticed that there was a highlight with regards to Shopee in the Philippines. I think this is what we're doing with one of the largest e-commerce in Indonesia, Bukalapak. How do we serve their merchants? So the merchants require inventory financing for the merchants to be able to sell more. So based on the data, based on the sales transaction history of the merchant, we provide a pre-approved limits in which this pre-approved limit can be used to facilitate the requirements of the merchants They can draw down based on this pre-approved limits and use that to purchase the inventory. Once they're able to sell the goods and service, we deduct the installment with the help of our e-commerce partner. So this is an example of what we call the embedded fintech, how we are embedding working capital solutions to merchants who are online through e-commerce marketplace. And definitely we see a strong growth in this segment. Obviously, given the pandemic situation, more and more e-commerce are digitizing their business online, which obviously is an advantage for us. Next slide. Oh, this is another example. So basically, this is a homepage of an e-commerce platform, a B2B e-commerce platform. Investree is there. So the merchants just click buttons within that dashboard to apply for a working capital finance. This is another example of what we are doing in terms of embedded finance, connecting through B2B e-commerce to connect the merchants with enterprises and government entities as well. Next slide. Yeah, so this is in a nutshell what Investree Indonesia has been able to create impact to the SMEs. I think, again, I highlighted the numbers, the proportion, 90% of businesses in the Philippines are SMEs. We truly see a huge opportunity. And I think it's an honor for me to be able to showcase what we have done, what we have proven in Indonesia. I think there is room also in the Philippines, and I hope this can be an eye-opener for those within audience of this webinar, especially the banks and the bankers who are joining this session, for us to further explore and try to incubate this type of collaboration in the Philippines as well. And again, I think it is in line with Investree's aspiration, how we continue to grow, how we can all grow, and obviously be a big part of this economic recovery, not only in the region, but particularly also in the Philippines. So with that, thank you. Maraming salamat po.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Adrian Gennady, for that great session. Now we'll move on to our next session, which is our panel discussion. Now, I'd love to call on our dear panelists. I'll call you again, Mr. Adrian Gennady, Professor Noel Canivel, and also Mr. Casey Lim to be part of our panel session. All right. Hi, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me.
Great to be here.
Good morning.
Hi, Casey. It's nice to see you again.
Marco, doing a good job as always.
Thank you so much. And Professor Noel, thank you so much also for being here. Just a reminder for our audiences, please do feel free to drop in your questions at the Q&A box. Feel free to drop them in and we'll go through them with our panelists. So as usual, thank you so much for being here. I think while we're waiting for some questions, I do have some questions prepared actually throughout the session. I think this one's for Adrian. This one's for you. How do fintech groups and organizations support the Ministry of Trade, Republic in Indonesia? And is that something we can eventually explore doing here in the Philippines?
Okay, so I think what we are doing is basically the fintech lending is actively part of the Fintech Lending Association. So what we do is, as an association, we have obviously frequent dialogues with various ministries, including the Trade Ministry, Ministry for Small Medium Enterprises. I think what we bring to the table is some of the on-ground experience on how we are helping the SMEs in Indonesia, how we are helping them and assisting them to provide working capital solutions. So based on this, what the government is doing is taking some of the success stories and developing policies related to that. So one of the key policies that was rolled out was the use of fintech actually to deploy the government relief program for SMEs during COVID. So Investree, we were also part of that. I believe we deployed close to about $5 million of that relief through various SMEs. So we will see more and more of this type of collaboration also. And it is also a key evidence of how fintech and fintech solutions are becoming more and more mainstream in terms of setting the overall, I would say, network or solutions for SMEs, including trade finance. So you see a lot of trade finance solutions are now being serviced by fintech lenders such as us, provide working capital, pre-export financing. So these are some of the innovations that we continue to do.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Idiot. We do have a question here. Any of you can pick it up. Any of you gentlemen can pick it up. It seems that the pandemic has no effect on the SME lending of industry. And how is that?
I think, again, I mentioned we work with ecosystems. And if you look some of the ecosystems, we are actually generating new SMEs through the digital ecosystem. So obviously, we are also selective, but we also see that many of these SMEs that are connected to this digital ecosystem remains underserved. So there is a demand, and we are facilitating that demand through various ecosystems. One ecosystem that I would like to highlight is actually the government e-procurement. So Investree is the only fintech lending platform that is connected to government e-procurement, or what they call the e-catalogs. This is an e-procurement where SMEs can provide goods and services to the government of Indonesia, which enables us to actually ensure that we are able to provide these SMEs for working capital solutions or based on government spending. And the highest amount of government spending last year, 2020, was actually in medical supplies. So that is one of the examples where we highlighted how we are supporting SMEs who are serving the government for medical goods and services. So again, what we did is obviously, number one, when COVID happened, we pivoted. We looked at strong, resilient industries, and we use our ecosystem to attack those industries. So again, in this pandemic, we also see opportunity of how we continue to serve and continue to grow.
Perfect. Would any of the other gentlemen would love to chime in on that question? I can repeat it for guidance. It seems that the pandemic has no effect on the SME lending of industry. How is that? Mr. Casey or Noel?
Actually, on the contrary, the pandemic has shifted a lot of businesses. Many SMEs seem to be having a hard time in their working capital. Many of their old customers are having difficulty in paying them. And if you are not being paid on time, these SMEs have a hard time in growing because they are not getting the necessary cash and working capital to grow. So from the supply side, their suppliers are not supplying them unless they can come up with the cash immediately. On the contrary, some SMEs, when they are selling, they normally give credit terms. And the normal credit terms that these SMEs give their buyers are 30 to 60 days. But what we see, particularly in the SME, the people that they are selling to are not paying on time. And since they are not paying on time, okay, there is a big opportunity to sell. But if the people that you are selling to, instead of paying you immediately, they're paying you after 90 days, 120 days, they run out of cash as well. So it's really a matter of looking at institutions like Investree and say, Listen, I am a legitimate supplier. I've been supplying the supply chain for 15, 20 years. I've been there for 2 months, 3 months, and I have not defaulted in any of my supplies. It's these kinds of opportunities that these SME can say, look at my track record. I've always performed. And based on that, institutions like Investree are willing to help these types of MSMEs. I'm not saying that they are there to help everybody. You have to have a certain track record. And many of these SMEs who have been part of the supply chain are in a grind, even if they've been operating for 5 to 10 years. So we don't want to lose them because, like Adrian said, they are in fact the backbone of the industry. Therefore, every particular support that is necessary, the support that is given by the DTI, the support that is forthcoming from the central bank and the World Bank, these are necessary things that should be there so that institutions like Investree, who is a marketplace, can now look and search the world over so that we can get funding to fund these SMEs. So that's what I've been getting in my teaching for the last 18 months. They've been coming over to AIM to find out, boss, how can we look at our working capital? There are solutions, and the solutions are institutions like Investree, and at the same time, showing everybody we're here to help. And that's it. That's it, Marco.
Thank you, Professor Noel. I totally agree with you that MSMEs are really the backbone of of the industry, and it's great that industry is here to help out these MSMEs to actually move forward, solve these hurdles and problems. So thank you so much, Professor Noel. I have a question for Casey. First of all, congratulations on your partnership with that bank. Can you tell us something about what can we look forward to with that partnership here in the Philippines?
Sure. Good question, Marco. So NetBank is positioned as a banking as a service provider. So we're working with NetBank to develop banking solutions that will reduce the amount of credit risk to our institutional investors. What do I mean by that? So imagine Noel was describing to me a supply chain financing where suppliers and vendors of reputable companies will have their contracts. Right. So what we do is we'll have the issuers or SME borrowers changing the account details to this potential NetBank collaboration. This allows us to monitor in real time the incoming cash flows and monitor the incoming cash flows from these large reputable conglomerates, listed companies, government units. This gives us better access and visibility to how and when the cash flows come in, which in turn translates into a better risk management system for our institutional investors. That's one of the areas we're working at together with NetBank. Hopefully that answers the question. Back to you, Marco.
Thank you so much, Casey. We do have one question. Anyone could pick it up. Congratulations on the Investree mission. May we know specific ways that you have that you will intend, or maybe that you have the intention to collaborate with existing banks?
Right. Let me try to answer, kick off the discussion here. I think what we have shared, what we have done in Indonesia is that we believe that there has to be a collaboration between banks and fintech. And I think that is where we also see the potential in the Philippines, because each has a unique proposition, each has their strengths that can be combined. I think what we are able, or based on our experience, is that we become a channeling partner with the banks, i.e. Investree originates potential SME loans for the bank to then decide. What we see in Indonesia, the ultimate credit decision remains with the bank, but Investree together with the banks, we define a risk acceptance criteria based on the bank's appetite and based on what product as well as credit grade that they are keen to fund, basically. So again, as I shared earlier, we see 60 to 70% of our loans are now being funded by institutions, and a big chunk of that is actually through the domestic banks. I think what we also have helped is there is a regulation actually in Indonesia whereby domestic banks have to have at least 25% of their credit portfolio onto small, medium businesses, right? And so we are helping them to also achieve this requirement at a much more scalable manner.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adrian. Any other gentlemen would love to chime in? Let me repeat the question. May we know specific ways that you have the intention to collaborate with existing banks? Anyone? Casey or Professor Noel? Any thoughts?
Maybe
Or
I
how
can
do we-
add on to
Yeah.
Adrian's answer.
Go
I
ahead.
believe this question came from Mr. Ricky Estrada. Thanks again for the question. Adrian described the collaboration we have with Indonesian banks in Indonesia. So in the Philippines, it's going to be very similar. The only slight difference will be instead of loans, we have promissory notes that's issued by the SME borrowers, if you will, right? So we'll be working with banks to refine the risk acceptance criteria that will meet their investment criteria, and will help facilitate for banks to purchase these very, very short-term notes so that they can not only channel funds to needy SMEs, but they can also earn a very decent return along the way as well. So channeling in the form of note purchase will be what we'll be looking to do in Investree Philippines.
Thank you so much, Casey. We have another question from Josephine. How exactly Investree be of use in the rural areas where internet is not good, especially on the islands? Well, that's a tricky question. So it's a question of reach. How do we reach these people?
No,
Yeah.
let me try to answer that with what we have done actually in Indonesia. Obviously, if you look at the ecosystem slide, so we actually work with the likes of some of the biggest e-commerce in Indonesia, such as Bukalapak, who have reached in, I would say, up to tier 2, tier 3 cities in Indonesia. So yes, it would be ideal if we can reach the very remote, but it is a process, and digitalization, it is also a process, right? That I believe countries such as the Philippines, such as Indonesia is going through. But we definitely see the potential. Right now, I think through our partners, such as Bukalapak, who are serving like 4 million merchants of SMEs, we're able to reach those 4 million through Bukalapak. And because Bukalapak is not a fintech lending company, however, they can enjoy and they can offer financial services to their merchants through Investree. So I think this may be an approach that we can also explore in the Philippines, perhaps working with some of the e-commerce providers or telco providers, for example, who has that reach, and we piggyback on that reach to address the rural sectors or the rural potential SMEs in that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adrian. I do have a question for Professor Noel. So you've been a banker for over 16 years, and just to add to that discussion earlier that we had, that Investree is there, right? More so, what are some of the other reasons why banks should leverage on partnerships instead of doing MSME financing on their own? Sorry, Professor Noel, I think you're on mute.
Banks they have their own specific credit scoring systems. Okay, I hate to say it, and yes, I've been a banker for over 35 years. Much of the lending of banks is really collateral lending. Okay, if you do not have any collateral, they will not lend to you. So there are many kinds of banks. There are corporate banks, there are retail banks. But if you look at the retail banks, for example, they lend to who? home financing, car financing. At the back of it is really what you call collateral lending. So when Adrian described the banking system, they practically only lend to the upper 10 to 20% of the market. The people who need it the most rarely get financing simply because it's very hard to credit score them. Okay, and normally, if you have been given trust by your depositors, you cannot just lend to anybody. And they've seen that, no? And not just here in the Philippines. If you are doing, let's say, I hate to say it, agricultural lending. Agricultural lending here in the Philippines is quite different from agricultural lending in Vietnam and in Thailand, wherein many of the farmers do not suffer catastrophes. Whereas here in the Philippines, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 of your crops are going to be hit by a catastrophe. And the minute you are hit by a catastrophe, these farmers are no longer able to pay for their loans. So, and such is the kind of environment that we Filipinos are faced with. So banks, even if they are told, you better support the agricultural sector, you better support the MSMEs, that's not really, that's tantamount to saying, be prepared to lose 10%, 20% non-performing loans, because every once in a while, catastrophes will happen and you will not be able to pay. So therefore, we have to have a better way of doing this, okay? We have to have a better way of credit scoring. We have to have a better way of looking at industries which need to be supported. So, and this is what fintech is actually helping us create. Fintech now, we are now able to credit score more and more borrowers, because amidst these 80% MSMEs, there are a lot of good borrowers. We'd like to identify them. And if they are part of the supply chain, that is what initially we are saying, no problem, we will lend to them. But this will only occur if we have the proper credit scoring that banks can be comfortable with. And this is what I think is being showed in Investree Indonesia. Many banks now are comfortable with the fintech digital scoring system that they're now saying, hey, I like that company. It has a good track record. It's able to credit score. So it's no longer credit scoring the upper 10 to 20%, but fintech is now able to go down and do credit scoring to a more number of people. And we have that here in the Philippines. So the more, or the faster we are able to adopt fintech and do credit scoring on the MSMEs, we are able to offer these borrowers to the market, and the market is more than willing to lend to them. Okay, so Marco, there's a lot of opportunity, and I see fintech really changing the landscape here in the Philippines. And the faster we do this, the faster we're able to grow again and get back to the GDP growth that we're looking for.
Thank you so much, Professor Noel.
Let me add up to Noel's comment on credit scoring, because I think that's very relevant. And I see a question from, say, Lito, if I'm not mistaken, with regards to the risk mitigation with regards to the unsecured type of SME lending. I think how can you use alternative credit score is very important. And I believe that is what we have done relatively well. And that is also one of the reasons we focus on certain key products within the working capital financing, which we do predominantly invoice financing or supply chain financing. We believe that this type of product has a more, I would say, payment certainty that enhances the repayment mechanism for the borrower. So that's one type of mitigation. The second type is basically, again, as Noel mentioned, credit scoring. That is one of the reasons why we are connected through ecosystems, through the digital partners, because They have the visibility on the data. Now, with the consent of the SME, we're able to access that data, right? And that data becomes a powerful information for us to credit score because these are real-time data. The challenge of a traditional SME lending is that you're using or relying on the books of the SME, which is a laggard data. So this is where we see technology. This is where we see what we call machine learning plays a critical role in the ability to credit process multiple data on a real-time basis. And the third point of this mitigation is working with credit insurance. So that is one of the credit enhancement that we do. In Indonesia, we work with credit insurance providers that covers up to 90% of the principal. If the loan goes delay beyond 90 days, we are able to claim that insurance. So this is an added protection of how we structure this SME financing through the supply chain mechanism.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Noel, and also Adrian. Casey, would you love to chime in on that discussion?
Pretty much, I think both gentlemen have answered it pretty much already.
All right,
but I'd just like to
right.
reiterate maybe one point that Adrian made pertaining the risk involved in this seemingly collateral free lending. What we're essentially doing is substituting the credit of a small SME with that of a large, well-known conglomerate, government entity, listed company, MNC. Right. So this way, we're able to disperse out funds and get investors comfortable that you're actually taking the payment risk of these large companies as opposed to relying on the credit score of a small company. Right. No matter how accurate the score is, that score only serves to differentiate between different type of SMEs. Right. But it doesn't make investors comfortable with the fact where is the money coming from to repay my note. Right, so we're trying to solve for that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I think I just want to go back to the question from Josephine. Adrian was able to answer it really clearly, but I want to pick your brain a little, Casey. It's like on the reach, how exactly Investree be of use in the rural areas where internet is not good, especially. Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So Adrian mentioned the partnership with ecosystems in Indonesia. He mentioned several examples like Bukalapak, e-commerce players. In Philippines, we also have various e-commerce payment partners like that target specifically the sari-sari stores. And even no matter how deep in the provinces you are, there's always a sari-sari store in the village that actually can take and receive payments. So we're on the lookout for partners that actually have reached to these sort of sari-sari stores, such that potentially we can fund the sari-sari stores to help out in the rural areas. That's one example. Another example we can be looking at potentially is similar to what we've done in Indonesia with this project Gramindo. This is a type of social financing whereby women entrepreneurs actually vouch for each other in the villages. So everyone takes out a very small loan and Investree provides the capital for this, right? Obviously, there are some players doing this already in the Philippines, and we're speaking to some of them to find out what potentially can work. So hopefully, if we do find the right partner that can help the scoring, in the collections, in the monitoring, and the discussions with these women or male entrepreneurs in the rural areas, this is something that we can do to alleviate financial inclusion in the villages.
Perfect. Well, we have Josephine saying, interesting. Thanks so much, Josephine, for that comment. I think that's all the questions that we have so far. But if the attendees if you guys have any other questions, just please do leave them in the Q&A, and we'll get them. We'll try to answer them, and then we'll send the answers as well to you guys. Again, thank you so much, Adrian, Casey, and Professor Noel for being here. We really appreciate it. If you guys have any final words, I would love to hear them.
Perhaps Pa Noel first on the final words.
When you're talking of reach, there is actually one institution in the Philippines where almost everybody can reach. And these are the local government units, LGUs. Okay. LGUs hold a big portion of the Philippine budget. Unfortunately, LGUs carry a very bad rap, meaning the people who are in the LGUs are themselves playing different kinds of games. But what we are seeing in the last few years is several mayors, several people are really devoting their time and effort to make sure that their LGUs are above board and are working properly. Now, Marco, believe it or not, we've identified 2 or 3 or 4 very good LGUs. We've featured them in Asian Institute of Management. We told them, God, how are you making sure you're running your LGUs very well? And many of your employees are very engaged. It's these types of LGUs that we'd like to see proliferate all over the Philippines. And if they are run the same way that these above board LGUs are done, they do a lot of financing. They reach out to a lot of borrowers. Perhaps institutions like Investree, knowing that there is an LGU that is above board, they can get financing. Not just from Investree, they can get financing from everywhere. The World Bank, in fact, has huge amounts of money that is ready to be tapped. But let's not make sure it goes to the right, it doesn't go to any pocket. It goes to the right people. So that's my message there. I don't want to be political, but I am saying this is one way of getting our country out of the rut that we are in.
Thank you, Professor. I totally agree with you. And I think AIM, Asian Institute of Management, showcasing these good mayors of good governance really sets a standard of being, and especially me, having growing up outside the Philippines and coming back with that hope of, I want a good government. I want good Philippines to happen. And with these new mayors with good governance, it's really hopeful. So thank you for sharing that, Professor Noel. Yes, Adrian, go ahead.
It has been an honor for me to be able to share what we have done to showcase a little bit about our collaboration with the banks, collaboration with the ecosystem, and how the fintech lending industry in Indonesia has grown from a very small number about 5 years ago to now about $12.8 billion of loans that we have originated. And obviously, there are several factors I believe that has contributed to this. Number one is a strong supportive regulatory environment. I see the Governor Diokno is very much supportive. So I think this has to be taken as an opportunity for the Philippines to also look at fintech lending to grow, right? And we at Investree are more than happy to share our learnings, what we have done well, what did not go well. So, I think that we can play a significant contribution in accelerating access to finance for SMEs in the Philippines. And also, again, as I said, hopefully this can be a path to recovery post-COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Anything, Casey?
Sure. Thank you once again for attending this webinar. We really appreciate you taking time off. Final word for the bankers and rural banks that joined today's webinar. Just a final plug. So if you are looking to lend out to SMEs but face problems finding out where and how to do it, and you want to avoid restrictive, prohibitively expensive, capital-intensive ways to do so rather than hiring people, sending out a new branch, perhaps one simple way is to work with us, Philippines' first crowdfunding platform. Buy our notes, take a look at the fact sheets that we have, determine for yourself whether these kind of products will suit you. We've checked with our lawyers, and for rural banks and financial institutions, including finance companies, you are allowed to buy these notes. They're extremely short dated in nature. They pay a handsome return between 1% to 3% a month. Right, so this gives you a very cost-effective way to participate in the MSME financing for Philippines. So together, I think we can all grow together. Right, so thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you again, Adrian, and also thank you, Professor Noel, for being here. You guys, it was a great and lovely discussion with you. All right, now let's move on to the next part of the session. Again, I would love to thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to our dear speakers, our dear panel, and also for everyone who did our keynotes. And all our guests, you guys are all amazing. Without you, MSME Forum wouldn't happen at all. All right, now let's move on to the next part. So we're not leaving you guys empty-handed. If you guys refer a business, you can earn up to 50,000 per referral. So all you have to do is just help the business owners within your network to get access for additional capital. You can also help them in managing expenses and new orders with our funding options here at Investree, and also assist them in transforming their invoices for purchase orders into cash. So all you have to do is, I think a link will be shared at the chat box, so you can visit Investree and you guys can do the referrals with your friends or anyone you know who might benefit from Investree. All right. So again, thank you everyone for attending Investree's MSME Forum. Before we officially close this event, may I request everyone to not forget to answer the feedback form. We would really love to hear your thoughts and your feedback so we can have better online learning events like this. So the link, you can scan the QR code as you see on the link, or a link will be shared through the chat box as well. Again, thank you so much for being part of Investree's MSME Forum. My name is Marco Lages, and I hope everyone has a great day ahead. All right. Bye, everyone.